Hello and welcome to Level 5 Health and Social Care, Unit 505, Working with Service Users with Complex Needs. We've pretty much covered the whole unit in the previous 3 weeks' work. So this week 4 is a fairly short PowerPoint. I'm just going to look at the assignment, a little overview of the assignment, just talking through what's needed. Okay. So before you start your assignment, do remember this is a level 5 assignment. It's the equivalent of year 2 of an undergraduate degree, and it really should be reflected in the quality and the quantity of the written work. Now you do have a word count for each one, okay, so you can't go over it more than 10%, as you know, and don't forget to make sure you put your word count on the front sheet. Okay, please don't put it in the body because that's not really the right style. All sources should be cited in text, and there needs to be a full reference list at the end of the assignment in the Harvard format. Those of you who've worked with me before, you should have your Harvard referencing guide available, and please use that for reference. Anyone feels they haven't got it, just let me know and I'll send it to you on WhatsApp. Okay, please don't use the criteria as headings. That's not level 5 way of writing, really. It needs to be more essay-like. You can use your task numbers as headings, which means you probably only have 3 headings. However, try to address the criteria within the paragraph as part of your written response. It's my job to find it if it's there. Okay, try to make your paragraphs flow nicely from one to the other, not too jerky away. You'll get higher and lower marks on your presentation because of that. Only put your number count in the boxes on the front of the sheet, as I said. Please don't put them after each task or in between tasks. That's not. So I'm looking at the way you're delivering your answers now. Your presentation marks are going to go up and down depending on the quality of the way you deliver the answer, as well as the layout. So I'll be focusing a bit more at this level on how it looks, how professional and how academic it looks. Okay. Again, if you're unsure, you can always ask me. Try to bring in examples of wider reading, not just the stuff that I talk about. Bring in some of your own. You can actually bring stuff from the resources that I've given you to read, and you can also bring in your own. But please make sure it's relevant and make sure it's accurate. Any wider reading that you bring in does need to have a citation and a reference. Okay, I need to know where you've got it from and that you haven't just made it up. Believe it or not, I have read quite a lot of things, so I do tend to recognize a lot of stuff. So, and again, do what the command verbs tell you. Okay, so let's look at task 1. Task 1 is 600 words, and there are 2 criteria. So the overview of it is that you're going to be analysing different perceptions of health, disability and illness, okay? But what you're actually focusing on to get into that 600-word answer is to describe the historical and current definition applied to health, disability and illness. Now, we looked at this in week 1. You need to sort of think about those 3 words, health, disability and illness. What is the current definition of them? Has it changed? This is just a description. You don't need to do any evaluating. You just need to tell me about it. So what's changed over time? Okay. What's the approach? Is it different now to what it was? What's the history that you know of it? We talked a bit about health. We talked quite a lot about the history of disability, how that's changed since a lot of them have changed since the age of enlightenment. If you go back and have a look into week 1, you'll find that sort of answer. So I want you to think about that. You've only got so many words, okay? So you can't go into tons. Don't give me a literally year by year, but just give me some highlights of the historical changes for those 3 words, okay? And be succinct in doing it. And then the second part of it is for you to pick one condition. Now, we probably want you to pick something like a chronic condition. I don't want you just to pick flu or something, because there isn't that much difference. We want something that maybe someone's lived with for a while, like cancer or learning disabilities. Mental health is quite a good one. I think I've given you an example of mental health. So I want you to pick one condition, just one, analyzes the difference in perceptions historically. So what has changed? So say you're doing mental health, think about how 300 years ago mental health was treated. What did people understand by mental health? The only differences we're looking at is in perception. So it's about people's understanding of the meaning of mental health. Because if you answered that question on treatment, you'd be writing a heck of a lot more than 600 words. Okay, so remember, keep it focused, don't get sidetracked. Choose one condition: mental health, learning disability, cerebral palsy. I gave you some ideas at the end. Cerebral palsy is quite a good one because there's been quite a lot of changes about that. In perceptions, so think about, what did people think of this illness? First of all, what did people think caused that illness 300 years ago? Do they think the same today? What did people think 300 years ago that you could do if you had that illness? Do you think the same to say? Okay. How much care and support did people think you needed then compared to today? Is it the same? Is it different? Has it changed? But don't get, as I said, don't get tied up into treatments, because that will take all your words away and it won't answer the question. Okay. So I am highlighting the actions in yellow, and the words that I think are important, the drivers, in pale blue. So just remember that. Okay, now let's move on to task 2 then. We put that one aside. And this is related to the week 2 set of slides. Okay, again, it's 600 words. The overview of it is that you're going to be looking at how to promote the participation and independence of service users. Okay, so remember, this bit is only focusing on service users, not anybody else. So again, don't get distracted in that way. 2.1 is linking to legislation. Discuss how you can promote independence in service users. So you are going to find a piece of legislation that relates to promoting independence in service users. Now, in week 2, I looked at the Care Act of 2014. You can do the Care Act because it is the biggest act that really focused on promoting independence. So it's not a problem if you all answer using the Care Act, okay? Because it would be the first one that people would think of. So it's okay. However, if you do come across any other pieces of legislation that relate to promoting independence, you can add those, or you can just work on that one alone. But you need to give me lots of information, okay? So linking to legislation. So when you're promoting independence, you need to tell me, like, where is it highlighted in the legislation? So don't just say, I mean, you can just say the Care Act says, but it would be great if you could just like pick up a little bit from the Care Act and then just say this identifies, point 31 says this, which focuses about discussing independence. Yeah. So if you can physically really link it rather than just opening your paragraph of the Care Act says, but say, if you can show me where or maybe what words say that, then that would be really, really helpful, and it would take your mark a little bit better for your second clause. Okay. So 2.2, discuss the mechanisms. So again, you don't need to evaluate anything. You don't need to tell me what's good, what's bad, what you would choose and why not. Not asking you that at all. It's just asking you to discuss. So it basically means tell me about, okay? So the mechanisms by which service users can be involved in developing service. Mechanism, what tools, what ways can you involve service user? So this is where you talk about, your resident groups, your little surveys, your newsletters, your consultations, those sorts of things. And I do go into that in quite a lot of detail. Um, think about, the feedback that I use from your clinic, where you use the sort of smiley face kiosks. They're so heavily used now, but they are the most effective. Remember, I gave you a slide that told you which ones were more effective and why. So you could bring some of that information if you want. It's not asking you to evaluate, so you don't need to spend a lot of time on telling me what one's better than the other. But if you've got the word count and you can fit it in, then I will give you a mark for it. Okay, so that's task 2, and that's all in week 2 slides and resources. Now, task 3 is the larger task. It's got 3 criteria, so it's 800 words. And the overview of it is that you're looking at how the design and review of services promotes and maximizes the rights of users of health and social care services. But it's actually focusing here on all stakeholders. So task 2 just focuses on involving your service user. Task 3 clearly focuses on all of your stakeholders. So it's the stuff that we looked at in week 3. What is the role of stakeholders in service design and review? You might want to tell me about the different types of stakeholders. And you might want to tell me about how, who might be more involved than others if you want. You might want to talk about your matrix. Okay, that would be very helpful to answer 3.1. And because then you would identify the different types of roles. So remember, there's more than one role of stakeholder in service design and review, depending on where they come on your matrix. Explain that to me a little bit. Okay, I will allow a picture of the matrix if you want, but you might want to put, if you do use the matrix, you might want to give me some examples of the people that you've put in the different corners. Okay, so show me that you know how to use a matrix, and you can only do that by putting the different types of stakeholders in the right boxes, and I would understand that. It asks you here, 3.1 asks you to evaluate. So, you want to talk about some of the pros and cons. What are the good bits and the bad bits? Sometimes you have to involve people that you might not want to involve. Think about that. And how it's really important to use your matrix and get people at the right level of engagement. And that's part of your evaluation, because if you don't, and if you just sort of treat them all the same, we know there'll be a negative effect from some people. Some people won't be involved enough, some people won't be involved. So why is it important as part of your evaluation? Why is it important to know what level of engagement you're going to use? Okay, that's for 3.1. For 3.2, think about how you get feedback. Now, that is addressed a little bit for stakeholders. For the service users, that was addressed in week 2. So you can reflect on some of that. Don't forget, you don't leave service users out of this. They are part of the bigger group. So don't forget them. Just because you answered a question on them in task 2 doesn't mean to say you leave them out of this. So evaluate how feedback from all stakeholders can be collected. reflect a bit on what you got in week 2 and what we heard here, all the different approaches, surveys, social media, text, mobiles, those sorts of things. And here it says evaluate. And now it says evaluate. You can use that chart from week 2 that tells you which ones had the most response, which ones was the most effective, which one had the most answers. So you could use that as part of your evaluation if you wished, okay? That would be fine. And I wouldn't mind if you wanted to copy and paste that chart into here, but don't just leave it as the chart, but give me some lines of explanation. So pick up some highlights, that's important. 3.3 is just discuss. So it's what we did last week, pretty much the last bit of last week. We thought about the types of tensions in developing services. So what are the sort of problems that might arise? What are some of the difficulties? And basically, you just need to explain that to me. You don't need to evaluate what's more important than another. You just need to discuss some of the ideas in the last slide that I did with you. What are the tensions? So, things about time constraints, things about service users, people's views of service users. Are they able? Are they not? Can they do it? Their own confidence, skill set. People need training? Do medics, get threatened when other people sit on groups with them? Those sorts of things. What other tensions can there be for staff who are involved? Do they keep leaving? Do they keep getting moved around? Have they got the time to make the commitment? Are they too busy doing other things? Are we short? That sort of stuff, really. So just a little bit of a discussion about that. So just explain to me some of the points. Okay. Don't forget, anything you bring in from other areas, particularly, I want to see a citation and reference in. If you bring stuff in from the resources I've given you, I want to see a citation and reference in. If you bring something in from my slides, try to find a citation and a reference. Not particularly me, because everything I get is from another book somewhere. So I'd like you to find a reference, really. So don't write a whole paragraph. If you write a whole task without a citation in it, that won't be good enough. And again, your marks will go down on application. Okay. So within each paragraph, there needs to be at least 2 or 3 citations. This is level 5 standard, and it's what would be expected. Don't forget to make your referencing tidy, alphabetical order. Remember the style of Harvard and do it correctly. Okay. If you're quoting from a website, there may well not be an author, because that's often the way they're done. So you quote the organization. So if it's, say, like a BBC News report, you might find that they haven't written an author. It's just a BBC blog or a BBC article. So just for, instead of author, just put bbc.co.uk. Yeah, something. Whatever the headlining is, it will say what the organisation's proper name is up in your address line. Okay, so just try and remember that. You know where I am. I'm at the end of WhatsApp if you need to discuss anything. Don't forget, try to hit the deadline. If you can't hit the deadline, then make sure that you contact the college ahead of time with a written request for an extension, and please copy it into me as per usual. Okay, well, that's everything really for this one. So I'm going to leave you to it. And like I said, if you've got any questions anywhere, you know what to do, just contact me. Okay, thank you and good luck.